Hello, everyone. It's lovely to see everybody here in this great Friday afternoon. It is a pleasure to be here with you, and it's a pleasure to have you guys at the first of its kind, the inaugural demo day for Diplomacy Lab. As Brian mentioned, my name is Thomas DeBas. I'm the Managing Director of Global Partnerships here at the U.S. Department of State. The Global Partnerships essentially is a leader in the private sector engagement and public-private partnership building in the federal government. We were established back in 2008, part of the advisory committee for transformational diplomacy that suggested to the department that it should get into engaging and advancing its objectives through private sector engagement. And so we've been around for over about 12, 13 years right now. And we've done a lot of work in the space of private sector engagement for the department, but broadly even the interagency or the U.S., the federal government. But you might be asking, what is the U.S. Department of State, the foreign policy apparatus, would be interested in engaging the private sector? Because this is a house that Thomas Jefferson built, so we are known for engaging government-to-government type of engagement. So you might be thinking, why do you work with the private sector? It is because of data. If you look at data flows, or not data flows, economic engagement flows from back 1970s from US to the world, about 90% of it used to be what we call ODA, official development assistance, which is foreign assistance money that goes. But now in current times, it is actually completely reversed. About 90% of it is all private sector. About less than 10% is foreign assistance, which is official development assistance. So that shows us that the world has shifted very dramatically. So the private sector is playing, a very expansive role in our foreign policy work and in our development objectives work. So engaging the private sector is not some kind of liberal sentiment of kumbaya, let's just work with everybody. It is rooted on data. So it is within that context that we engage with the private sector. On top of that, when we say private sector, most folks that come to their mind would be corporations. That's not true. It's corporations, foundations, startups, faith-based groups, diaspora groups, essentially, and civil society groups, and most importantly, academic institutions, the entire fabric of American society. Because it is that fabric that gives America its superpower in terms of projecting its leadership role around the world, and most importantly, how we even effectively engage economically around the world. So it is within that context that why we're here, why academic institutions are important to our foreign policy work around the world. So Diplomacy Lab is is part of that fabric I just described. And Diplomacy Lab for us is a labor of love, especially for Brian Gerhardt, which you've seen his passionate work in the space, is a work that we have forged with about 40 universities to essentially what we call core sourcing foreign policy challenges. Unfortunately, the Department of State does not have its own think tank. So this is our creative way of kind of core sourcing our own think tank by working in this decentralized element of working with universities around the world in kind of addressing the challenges that we face in formulating foreign policy. And so Diplomacy Lab is essentially a marketplace or clearinghouse, so to speak. As an office, we manage this entire enterprise, is the supply and demand element of it. The demand comes from our embassies and our bureaus in Washington saying, we have these challenges that we're thinking through, and then kind of universities think and address these issues. Then the universities essentially bid on these questions and be able to work on it over a semester. And our university partners who are on the call know the system quite well. I'm just kind of explaining this for those folks who are joining us for the first time who are hearing about Diplomacy Lab. And also my U.S. Department of State colleagues who are probably first time tuning in to learn about this program. So it's essentially a marketplace of us asking questions and universities addressing these challenges. And these questions range, and you'll hear some of them here, are very diverse, from kind of UN voting patterns that we've looked at, or to the implication of AI into our foreign assistance, in the future of our foreign assistance. So it's the range of subjects is vast, and the diversity of universities also vast, from both in geography and kind of in size. So the department also not only uses this as a research agenda, advancing our research agenda, but also use it as a recruitment tool. I think if I'm not mistaken, we do have a former student who participated in Diplomacy Lab, now actually is the Diplomacy Lab coordinator in one of our bureaus. So it's one of these things. I'm sure if that person was there, not only I was a student in this program, I'm also an employee. It's kind of the old hair club a joke in that sense. So we are very proud that such a system that started as a kind of an experiment thing has gone to this number of universities, has gotten this level of kind of attention is awesome. And then also this program is not just for the students who are in the international affairs arena, right? We've made sure that the diversity of the student pool that gets participate in this program is as vast as what universities offer, because our foreign policy challenges are not just for those policy wonks that are focused on international affairs, but are also our scientists, coders, and architects, and economists, and sociologists, and every aspect of how society is impacted around the world. So we take pride also in being able to attract the disciplines that are represented everywhere. So on that note, and a BG, and we call him BG, Brian Gerhardt will be able to kind of explain for those of you on how to kind of join this club, so to speak, this exclusive club, as we call it. But I just want to be able to address the students who've been able to participate in this program. I just want, on behalf of the entire department, my heartfelt gratitude for all of you who bring your energy, your brilliance, your intellect, and most importantly, your passion that you have for international affairs, the empathy that you have in issues that are impacting not only our country, but our entire world. And there's a saying that says, there's nothing foreign about foreign policy. And you embrace that mantra. And I just want to be able to extend my gratitude to you, the students, and also the faculty. Without the faculty, the students would not be able to do what they do. So thank you. And this platform itself is a homage to you all. So because we've been seeing your research, your work quite intimately, and we kind of felt kind of guilty that why is it not the world seeing the great work that you're doing? And so we hope this is the first of many to come. And as Brian mentioned, this is kind of an experiment for us. Give us the feedback so we can make Diplomacy Lab the next big thing. And also the kind of this demo day as a way to kind of continue to showcase your work. And I hope to see some of you become my colleagues or colleagues within the federal government. I hope this triggers and unleashes the kind of desire that you have for public service, because the pandemic had showed us that we're going to need much more public servants to continue to not only address the pandemic, but also to continue to advance America's leadership around the world. So on that note, thank you, and I'm looking forward to see these presentations. So Brian, let me pass the microphone to you.
All right, thank you so much, Tomas. As Tomas mentioned, I'm Brian Gerhardt. I oversee the Diplomacy Lab partnership from the Office of Global Partnerships at State. I'm going to keep my remarks really brief so that we can get to the reason we're all here, which is these presentations from our student research teams. But I just wanted to give a quick background for my State Department colleagues about how to get involved in this program, and to any folks who are checking in from a university who's not already in our network, to let you know how you can get involved. So first, to the State Department officers who are on the line, thank you for joining us. As Tomas mentioned, this is a program that we've run for a few years now. We run on a semester cycle, which means twice a year we collect projects from officers like you, whether you're in the field or here in Washington, D.C. And as Tomas mentioned, you can really submit any kind of research topic that you've got on the mind. If you're trying to get a product built, that works. If you're trying to just get some standard, white paper style research, we've got a whole network of universities who are anxious to take on the projects that you submit. So the way to do that is to head to the link that I'm going to ask my colleague Anna to drop in the chat right now. There we go. This is a long link, so you might just want to click on it. If you're not a State Department officer, this link is not going to take you anywhere you can go. But State Department officers, this will take you to GP's SharePoint page. If you click on the button there, there is a form that you can fill out where you'll submit your research idea, and we'll then field that out to our university partners in a project menu where faculty at our partner universities will get to bid on projects like yours. So there's no guarantee, as Tomas mentioned, this is kind of a marketplace that we run. There's no guarantee that by submitting a project, it'll be undertaken by one of our university partners. But we encourage you to think through, ways that you might utilize this in your own work and submit a project proposal. To our friends from the university world who are tuning in and saying, what the heck is Diplomacy Lab? How do I get involved? We institutionalize relationships with partner universities that are based in the United States. We do that by signing an MOU, going through the university as a whole to make sure that we're not just getting, as Tomas mentioned, we're not just getting students in the international studies programs, but students from across the university. So you'll see the diversity of the types of students and faculty we've engaged through this program in the presentations today. But if you are interested in bringing your university on board as part of this partnership, then I encourage you to visit www.diplomacylab.org. There's instructions on how to apply. There's an application form. We review these applications. We collect them on a rolling basis and review them about once a year and bring on new batches of partners into our network. We're excited to keep building that out and recruiting new partners. And so we'd encourage you to check out the website, see if you think it's for your university. And if you want to talk more about the ins and outs, the details of this program, shoot me a message. My email address will drop in the chat right now. Is gerhardtbr@state.gov. I'm going to keep it to that because I want to get to these presentations. And so let me first introduce our first student team. They're from Indiana University, Bloomington, and they partnered with the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor's Office of Multilateral and Global Affairs for a project, a research project titled Global Attitudes on Artificial Intelligence and Human Rights. So CJ is going to manage the screen, but to our student presenters, I encourage you to unmute yourself. I'm going to hit mute for myself, and we encourage you to kick things off. Please feel free to introduce yourself as you start talking, and say slide when you're ready for CJ to move to the next slide. So without any further ado, Indiana University Bloomington, take it away.
Great, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to hear our presentation today. We're really excited to share our findings with you. So my name is Peyton Cerniak. I am a current sophomore at Indiana University, and I am studying cybersecurity and global policy. This past semester, I acted as one of the project managers for the team.
Hi, I'm Kate Reardon. I'm a current freshman studying cybersecurity and global policy, and I looked into Russia's human rights record for this project.
Hello, my name's Nick, and I'm studying at IU and the Hamilton Lugar School for Central Asian Studies. My specialty on this project was understanding Singapore's policies. But before we get started, I want to acknowledge the fact that we were a team of about 15 students, plus Mr. Om Prakash's guidance, getting us through this project. So you'll see us three up here, but it wasn't just us alone. So I just want to get those acknowledgments out there to recognize the true talent we have on our team.
Yeah, so next slide, please. This is just gonna be our introduction. Next slide, please. So what exactly is artificial intelligence? So in the broadest sense, computer programs that are designed to do tasks that were once thought to require human intelligence. And this definition makes our research really interesting in that we are intersecting that with human rights and seeing how they intertwine with one another. Next slide, please. So here you can see a timeline of when countries started sending out their AI strategies. And as you can see from the timeline, they all kind of rolled out rather quickly. So right after Canada, a lot of others started coming out, and this was countries starting to position themselves for the eventual AI race. And due to the timeliness of the publishing, it's safe to assume that countries were starting to write them up, but just had never published them. So Canada kind of got the ball rolling, and other countries soon followed. Next slide, please. So present day statistics. These are all of the published AI strategies currently. Currently over 40 nations have AI strategies, but many others are also in the process of making them. Next slide, please. So our overarching questions. So one, how are countries prioritizing human rights in their AI strategies? And two, what opportunities do current frameworks for AI governance and strategy present to the U.S. State Department for diplomacy? So throughout the research process, students were asked these questions along with others with regard to their nation of study, and with hopes of creating a paper with similar contents, despite each section being written by different individuals. And due to our team constantly asking these questions and keeping them in mind, we were able to achieve relatively seamless results. Next slide, please. So initially, we had a very bold and broad attack with a lot of different nations that we wanted to look into. In looking at the map, the countries in red indicate the nations we initially had on our list to look at, but we unfortunately could not get to. Reasons for this being things such as time restraints, lack of content, and students that were ultimately unable to participate in our class. And countries in blue indicate nations we were able to research further, and you will hear more about our findings later on. Next slide, please. So our approach. Initially, we began by analyzing the current AI ecosystem of each nation and mapping out their AI ecosystem to get a better understanding on where they currently stand in the world of artificial intelligence. But after this, we then looked at the human rights record and compared how the two reflect one another. So in doing this, we were able to gain insight into how the country views not only human rights and artificial intelligence, but also how they view the two intersecting. Next slide, please. Next, Kate will speak on our findings.
So as Peyton mentioned, the AI space race has really begun, and each year we've had unprecedented levels of investment in AI from each country, with China spending $70 billion alone in 2020 on their AI research and development. And because of the potential to revolutionize so many sectors, including healthcare and education, reducing poverty, and combating climate change through artificial intelligence, reasons for this investment become much clearer. However, the leaders investing the most in AI have the most checkered past in human rights records. So our research was very pivotal to see whether or not they were upholding their end of the bargain with their human rights protections in their AI D&D. Next slide, please. So we found some new opportunities for diplomacy throughout our research. Because AI solutions are becoming the answer to so many global problems, the United States has a unique opportunity to support our allies and engage with adversaries on their human rights initiatives within their AI strategies. Each of our researchers found something interesting on this point, with our researcher looking at South Africa, finding that they didn't yet have an AI strategy, but they are currently investing in AI R&D, so it would be a point of collaboration that we could help them draft their strategy. The student researching Vietnam found that they need support incorporating human rights into their existing strategy and reaffirming those human rights protections that the other parts of their policies guarantee. And then the person researching Iran found that establishing educational programs and training partnerships with the United States is something that Iran has mentioned in the past. So this could be a great point of collaboration with them. Next slide. So we found that some strategies explicitly mentioned human rights while others indirectly hinted at them. It's important, obviously, to remember that actions speak louder than words. And as we mentioned, many of the analyzed countries have checkered past, but they do claim to be protecting human rights within their strategy. So, for example, Japan has published an extensive policy outlining their human-centered approach to AI. And my research on Russia, I found that one of the 5 pillars of the Russian strategy is to ensure the protection of human rights and freedom, which it's very interesting. And then to try to put this research in context, we looked at different human rights indices, like the Freedom House scores, to see whether or not the strategy seemed to align with past policy documents and current human rights situations. Next slide. And while we went about this research to see what artificial intelligence applications could be negative to citizens in the country and their human rights protections, we did find many ways that AI is helping to guarantee human rights and achieve the different human rights SDGs, such as combating human trafficking through facial recognition, helping citizens to overcome internet censorship and evade their restrictive regimes, and providing new opportunities for work, training, and economic advancement as different potential benefits that some countries are already seeing with the implementation of AI into their government. So now Nick is going to mention some different things about our findings from our paper. Next slide.
Okay, next slide. Okay, so what we found throughout all of our research, we found a series of different specific recommendations for each country. You know, my country was Singapore, so I can talk to that. But more broadly speaking, what we found is this is a very unique time for both challenges and opportunities. As we're talking about, some of the other countries don't view human rights the way we do, so their implementation and their funding of AI ask some questions that create some new hazards and new ways to challenge our diplomatic tools to address. But you know, looking at a more positive view, we have our vision here, where we see a lot of opportunities where we can work with our allies and create international norms. We can fund education and training opportunities, and we can collaborate to improve human rights using AI. Next slide, please. So with creating international norms, and I would like to reference the Global Partnership for Artificial Intelligence. That's a great program, international program that's promoting good diplomacy with AI. And what we can do with this is we can use our tools as the United States. You know, we're a very powerful economy. We have a lot of the technology and skill sets that we can use to promote all of our tools and leverage our allies to promote human rights across the globe. You know, whether it's helping them start out and create their first policy papers, you know, we can, you know, create joint statements with them and promote universal and mutual goals to push forward into the next 21st century here. Next slide. And like I said, human rights is our huge focus, and AI has the opportunity to both help and hurt that. That's, you know, I'm not trying to be dangerous or anything, but that's something that we should use U.S. leadership now to get ahead of the game. You know, like we saw 2017 is some of the first policy papers. This is brand new. This is a brand new opportunity for us to get involved in, and I think that's super cool. And it kind of got me excited, you know, because how often does this type of technological revolution happen? And I see a great path for U.S. global leadership, promoting human rights and improving the world for everyone. Next slide. So this is our team, like I alluded to earlier. We are but 3 students here, but this is our full team. And again, I'd like to thank Professor Isaac for helping us, as well as our liaison. And yep, next slide. And we're open for any questions. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Kate, Peyton, and Nick. Really appreciate that. We're going to see if there's any questions in the chat, then we're happy to ask our student presenters. I'm going to give that just a moment so that we can keep the show on the road. Obviously, Nick, Kate, and Peyton, you did such a good job that nobody has any questions. You have answered fully, but we really appreciate you kicking this event off today. That was fantastic. What we're going to do now is pass this over to the faculty lead and the State Department officer who proposed this project initially. So let me introduce Professor Isak Asari from IU Bloomington. Isak, why was this something that you felt compelled to take on to research with your student team?
Yeah, excellent. And I think really, really great question. For us, a lot of our students, I mean, I'll just say it this way, and just as a broad, I think Diplomacy Lab is the best thing ever. Okay, first stop. I think we have a lot of students who want sort of initial experiences in diplomacy, get their feet wet, as it were, right? And a lot of them have intentions of joining the State Department, so look for their applications, etc. But the question was framed brilliantly, and so you know, Ahmad had the way that he was asking the question. There's a lot of research currently on sort of how AI is negatively impacting human rights, but he was saying, okay, well, let's go beyond that. Like, what should we do about that? And how can we actually engage, right? You know, what are the steps? What are the actual action points, you know, from that knowledge? And so the question in and of itself was just really intriguing to me. Aligns really well with my research. So a lot of the work that I do is just sort of helping countries think strategically about artificial intelligence, but likewise about finding opportunities for norm creation. And so I just loved the question, and then upon and then the opportunity for our students was I mean, you know, unmistakable.
That's awesome. A real quick follow-up, Isak. Was there anything, as you and your students started to kind of dig into this topic, was there anything that, you know, really surprised you, or was there anything about the experience in particular that you want to share with the group?
I would think two things that that the students actually mentioned in the presentation are really worth highlighting. The first is that even amongst places that you would not expect to be prioritizing human rights, when it comes to artificial intelligence, they are saying, at least, that they are prioritizing human rights. And so, you know, Kate mentioned Russia. The same goes with China. Now, you know, we can sort of take that very cynically and just say, well, that's what they're saying. But I think realistically, it does provide a lot of opportunities for engagement, right? So where there's been some sort of thought, sort of cold relationships, opportunities to thaw those and engage on something practical that sort of people are looking to for economic growth, et cetera. So I think that was certainly a good revelation. I think the second thing, though, is something that Nick said, that as much as we're talking about how AI can negatively impact human rights, and we have all of these standard examples like using facial recognition to track minority groups, or fill in the blank, that the same technologies can actually be employed to get around some of these issues, and to empower citizens to have sort of more open and free involvement in their societies. And so, I think that is, again, a great opportunity for engagement, great opportunity for investment. I think was really a unique revelation from the research.
Isak, thank you so much for your participation and leading this group. Again, to the students at Bloomington, incredible work. I know that there's a few questions that have popped up in the chat. If you want to kind of answer those as we continue to move forward, feel free. You can drop your email addresses if you feel comfortable, if people want to follow up directly. But thank you so much for kicking off this event today with that fantastic presentation. Isak, thank you again. Ahmad, thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate all of your participation and making this network what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and mute you, Isak and Ahmad, and we're going to move on to our next presentation. IU Bloomington has been part of our network for a good chunk of time, really since early on in the partnership. Our next presenters from Northeastern are a newer partner. And if I'm speaking correctly, I believe that the presentation that they're going to showcase was one of the first presentations research projects that they took on as part of this partnership. But before we get started with the student presentation, the Diplomacy Lab coordinator at Northeastern, Fiona Creed, is going to hop on and tell us just a brief overview of some of the exciting things that Northeastern has done in incorporating Diplomacy Lab on their campus. So Fiona, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then we'll pass it on to Chris for the student presentation. So Fiona, hi.
Hi, Brian. Thanks ever so much for the introduction. I presume everybody can hear me okay? Yeah, great. So we can actually move to the next slide, please. So I'm Fiona Creed, and I lead, as Brian said, the Global Studies and International Relations Master's Program at Northeastern University's College of Professional Studies. Today, I'm here with Ambassador Janet Garvey, Chris Knight, and Raisa Dukas from Embassy Beirut. Next slide, please. So we are a new partner of the Diplomacy Lab network, but already see Diplomacy Lab as a really ideal fit for our program and the university. Northeastern has experiential learning as a central part of every student's degree. So to give you some context for this, at the College of Professional Studies, in particular to our Global Studies program, our student body mostly consists of mid-career and executive level professionals across all sectors, including military and national intelligence. Our faculty has on-ground experience in various industries, including diplomacy experts like Ambassador Janet Garvey, foreign diplomats, and senior industry experts as well. Now, the Diplomacy Lab projects have so much substance and challenges to really engage both us as faculty and our students. Next slide, please. So for the purpose of this particular project, we embedded it with Embassy Beirut. We embedded it in a 12-week online capstone course, and the 12 students spanned 6 time zones. So this talented team from San Diego, California to Cambridge, United Kingdom, with their global mindset and diverse professional backgrounds, worked with basically worked under Ambassador Garvey's leadership and the embassy to solve challenges around the cultural economy during a financial crisis. For us, this project and other projects, they're a real demonstration of breaking down the artificial boundaries between the academic and the practical contexts. Next slide, please. Upon completing a Diplomacy Lab project, Northeastern students are awarded a micro-credential, and we see this as a really brilliant way for students to be able to demonstrate the skills they've learned and kind of translate their experience into this linkable entity, particularly on their LinkedIn profiles. One of the students, Chris Knight, is here today to present the research on behalf of the class. Next slide, please. Chris, to give you the introduction, has a bachelor's degree in health information administration from Indiana University. She has an MBA with a marketing concentration from the University of New Mexico. And Chris is in her final quarter of the Master's in Global Studies and International Relations program. She graduates this April. Over to you, Chris.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Creed, and hello, everyone. I am so excited to talk about our project with you today. Any chance I get to talk about experiential learning, I pounce on it. I'm still talking about my past graduate work and experiential project from 10 plus years ago, and I'm sure I will be talking about this project for years to come. We started our project with the end in mind. The U.S. Embassy in Lebanon gave us a very comprehensive but very clear objective, and that was do research to give us a comprehensive assessment, the lay of the land of the cultural sector in Lebanon. We want to know what type of cultural economy exists, who's performing it, who's driving it from a cultural standpoint, who's consuming it, where is it being consumed, what vehicles are culture being delivered. More importantly, though, the U.S. Embassy was very clear as a fellow funder that they wanted to have an economic drive, a presence of economic driving in this space. So working shoulder to shoulder with their fellow funders, they wanted to uniformly push the economy forward in Lebanon using culture as that economic driver. So really the economic value of their participation was another key objective. Likewise, in that efficiency in propelling the economy forward with their sponsorship, they wanted to find where there were subsectors of culture that were highly correlated as a multiplier effect for their sponsorship of any sort of cultural event. So with that in mind, next slide, please. Ambassador Garvey, who led us through this project, her background in public service was critical. She knows what the end's going to look like, and she had the wherewithal to know how to set us up for success. So first off, we in phase 1, a little bit longer phasing, a little bit of a ramp up, because it's a big ask to try to do this secondary research and find these cultural drivers, find economic data, et cetera. Ambassador Garvey set up 2 real world guest speakers for us. Those who are already involved in the culture economy Our first guest speaker helped us from youth focus. He's out of Boston, so he's got that large city, kind of like Beirut. His advice and how he partners with fellow cultural institutions in the Boston area focused on youth. Our second guest lecturer, again, from Ambassador Garvey's fantastic connections, really helped us. She set us up with a lecturer who is actually internationally based in driving culture in conflict areas. We couldn't have been more cradled and taken care of to really start off our secondary research. Next, we got broken into by Ambassador Garvey. She broke us into clusters around certain subsectors of culture to really help us bite off these digestible pieces. First being performing arts, visual arts, and then kind of the hodgepodge, which I gotta say, as far as the final report is concerned, was the most fun. Cultural analysis. I forever on my list of things to do will be to attend the Baalbek International Festival. Please Google it. It looks phenomenal. And once this COVID pandemic is out of our way, I will be going to this festival. Anyway, back on topic, our secondary research got kicked off. And once we had a solid first final draft, the next step was really getting 12 of us. I'm one of 12, and to try to get all of our individual voices into one report, making sure that all of us are taking care of each other. We did a really critical peer review feedback session. But better yet, we were so lucky, again, the engagement of the U.S. Embassy at the beginning of our project and then midstream, really making sure that we were on the right track and that our direction and our research was meeting the objective. So we got feedback from the U.S. Embassy. Taking both sets of feedback, we whipped into the phase 2 of our project, really succinctly making sure that we're touching on all points, all voices being heard from our secondary research, but now working in different teams focused on sections of our final report for that one polished effort, gave our deliverable on time with a lot of great accolades from the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon. So all in all, very successful. Next slide. I've talked about our critical success factors along the way. My fellow students on the line, I'm sure you can appreciate what I call real world motivation factor. As a graduate student, I crave any opportunity to work with a live project that's going to be put into play after my time is done on the research project. I give 120% on these projects. It's such a great experience that I take with me into postgraduate work. That's one side of the road, but the other side of the road was our U.S. Embassy partner, and you'll hear from her in a bit. Her active engagement, not only at the beginning of the project, midway through, and then at the wrap, was we were lucky to have that kind of feedback and that type of engagement from the U.S. Embassy to make sure that we were on the right track. My last point about this is that really, and I think you're hearing this with what Brian came and talked to us about today, how he kicked off our meeting. This is an opportunity, such a fantastic opportunity to build intelligence. As a student, I got latched on to one of the dance schools that I learned about, that I researched, Al Sarab. I want to keep tabs on them going forward. But as a student, I take this course and I have to move on. I've got to go through to graduation. But as a promoter of this type of research and having our teams from the diplomacy lab work on this research, it's a fantastic scalable process that you as in the driver's seat can really build intelligence using our expertise in research. Now, I've mentioned these two ladies previously, and I'm happy to hand the floor over to Ambassador Garvey and Raisa Dukas from the U.S. Embassy. Ladies.
Chris, thank you so much. Ambassador Garvey and Raisa Dukas, pleasure to have both of you join us here today. I'm gonna ask a similar question to you, Raisa, that I asked to Ahmad, which is, why was this something that you proposed? Why was this a topic that you thought would be useful to the embassy and to the State Department at large?
Sure. Thanks, Brian. And thanks everyone for allowing me to be here. evening time in Beirut, Lebanon. I note, actually, I think that it's kind of worth highlighting that we had identified this project as a theme to cover in fall of 2019, and we got no takers at that time. And then Northeastern, gratefully, thankfully for us, picked it up for this year. But I think it's important to highlight that because at the time that we had first developed this concept of really needing to understand this field a little bit better was the onset of the protests that were happening in Lebanon and the beginning of that really, really strong economic pressure in the country. And so COVID wasn't even really a factor at that time. It didn't really exist. But since then, obviously, when this project finally got picked up, there was the additional economic stress that came from COVID-19, that came from prolonged political and economic crisis in Lebanon. And, you know, as we, as the United States government, are looking for ways that we can partner with the Lebanese people, culture is one of those key ways to do that. And so this project became all the more significant, all the more important to look at, you know, in 2020 than it did in 2019.
I really appreciate that clarification. And for our State Department colleagues, a perfect example. I know that when you don't get your project picked up right away and I tell you, hey, let's recycle it, let's do it again, it seems like it's just going to go nowhere. Proof right here that, you know, when the right partner comes along, magic can happen. So speaking of that right partner, Ambassador Garvey, we're so glad to have you involved in this partnership network, given your extensive experience with the department. Why was this a topic that caught your attention? Why was this something that you thought, that's the one that we're going to work on with our students?
Thank you, Brian, and thanks to all the previous presenters. There were a couple of reasons. One, it seemed just like a project where we could really make a difference. I know how hard my colleagues are working in Beirut, and if we could provide them with information and resources and an understanding that would help them do their job better, then that was already an important motivation. Secondly, I have a background, I was a public diplomacy officer, so cultural diplomacy is something that I feel very strongly about and could help guide the students through that first part of it. One of the things I always feel important to say is that we are doing a research project to help our colleagues in embassies in the State Department, but these are our students who are earning their degrees, and I wanted to be sure that it was a sufficiently academic program as well. So we tried to broaden it out a little bit at the beginning and then hone in on the research project. I would say the things that were challenging were, obviously we were scattered all over these time zones, we were working virtually, but also we were working in a culture and in a language that none of my students had much experience with. Surprisingly or not, a lot of things are available in English, and we were able to do some other kinds of research. And once students started to find information.
Uh-oh, I think we might have lost Ambassador Garvey's signal. Let's see if we can get this.
Brian, maybe while we're waiting for Ambassador Garvey to jump on, I would just note that I think for us as an embassy, we're a high threat post. And I think even on our side, we were maybe a little bit skeptical about how much research would be able to be accomplished while people were working remotely. And the linguistic barrier that Ambassador Garvey mentioned was one that we also had a concern about, or maybe just, you know, kind of being aware that that might limit our findings or the findings that the university might be able to have. And we were just so impressed with how thorough a job every one of the students you know, did in terms of really peeling the layers and getting to some rather small, really, really discrete organizations that, you know, we wouldn't have thought would have such a presence online that would enable people to really kind of identify them. And it was just really, the quality of research was just so amazing. And so I just wanted to highlight that.
That's fantastic. And Ambassador Garvey, we'll throw it back over to you. We lost you for a sec, but looks like you're back now.
Yeah, sorry, trouble with internet in the Berkshires. It's always an iffy thing here. Better in Beirut than in the Berkshires, I'm sad to say.
Well, you know, one of the things that I continue to hear about this project is how, you know, much the involvement of you, Raisa, really made a difference in the research that Ambassador Garvey's team and students like Chris were able to conduct. Ambassador Garvey, I just wanted to ask you if there were any particular, stories you wanted to tell about challenges or things that surprised you about working with the embassy. Obviously, you have a lot of embassy experience, but was there anything about this project that took you by surprise?
I would say just discovering how rich the cultural environment is in Beirut. I think we all know that intellectually, but to actually see it was really quite extraordinary. The other thing that I thought was really wonderful was that at Race's suggestion, we looked into culinary arts, which was not something that I did very much in my diplomatic career, but which is very important in Lebanon and a key motivator for a lot of the travel that we hope will take place someday in the future as well. So those were sort of two surprises. But I think I was really glad because we had this feedback from the embassy, and that made it so real to our students, which was important.
That's amazing. Well, I want to thank all of you so much for participating. Fiona, thank you for your leadership in this program on Northeastern's campus. Chris, congratulations on the fantastic work that you and your team did. Ambassador Garvey, thank you so much for your continued involvement in this program. We're really lucky to have you on board. And Raisa, thank you so much. Again, I can't overstate the positive things that I've heard about your involvement and how it was your kind of enthusiasm and willingness to collaborate that made this such a success. So thank you to everyone here. We're going to go ahead and mute our Northeastern crew here now. And I am really pleased. We talked about having Northeastern as a new partner. We're going to go back to one of our true blues, another Indiana representative, IUPUI, which is the best acronym in the academic game. Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis. I think I got it right. I've gotten it wrong so many times before. But it's my pleasure to quickly introduce Professor William Foley, who has been with us through a number of projects. He has led a number of student teams through a really diverse array of topics. And we're really excited that today his student team is going to present an external evaluation of Kosovo's American Corners program. So Professor Foley, I'm going to pass it to you for a quick introduction, and then I'll let you hand it over to your students.
Okay, Brian, well, thank you very much. We had, this is a graduate course, and I'm going to mention at the end the students who are not with us today, but 5 students are with us. So I'd like to dilate a minute on these 5 students. Blair Buig is a graduate of Indiana, Purdue, Indianapolis in May of 2020. She's working on her master's program now in criminal justice and public safety. She's working with the Indiana General Assembly now as a Boris Fellow in fiscal policy, and she does a lot of good work in corrections. Taylor Kovatz is an MPA candidate in Homeland Security. She graduated from Indiana University with a bachelor's degree in political science. She works for the United States Postal Service, the Office of the Inspector General, and she's working with federal law enforcement and government auditing. Kevin Dahman is a captain, and Kevin is currently in the U.S. Army attending a Masters of Public Affairs program with Indiana, Purdue, Indianapolis. He's an aviation officer, 11 years experience, and Captain Dahman has also been deployed to U.S. Central Command, European Command, so he's familiar with EUCOM. And he received his Bachelor of Science from Indiana University of Bloomington, where he was commissioned through Army ROTC. And he lives in Fishers, Indiana, with his wife, Kimberly, and 3 daughters. Lauren Francis received her Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice in December of 2020 from Indiana, Purdue. She's in the Accelerated Master's program here. And she also has done a decent amount of good work with FEMA in Incident Command System, National Incident Management System, and she works as a writing consultant with the Marion County Sheriff's Office. And Angelica Ronke, she works as a psychotherapist. She serves public service in AmeriCorps here in Indiana, and she is a trauma-informed care certified practitioner. and she wishes to work in the government sector in the future for diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is very important. So I will turn this over to Blair, who will be the first presenter, and we're going to visit Kosovo.
Thank you, Dr. Foley, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm really excited to present this research and findings that our group found. You can go ahead and hit the next slide. So the goal of this research project was to provide the American Corners an analysis, findings, and then recommendations within Kosovo to the U.S. Embassy. And so if you're wondering what the American Corners are, as we quickly found out at the beginning of our semester, they essentially serve kind of as a bridge from communities in Kosovo to the U.S. Embassy, and the embassy provides education to their populations to try to help unite the country and establish a sense of identity. And so within these case studies that our class went through, we evaluated the state of the corners and their ability to meet the U.S. Embassy's strategic goals. And so those are highlighted in red at the bottom of here. But most importantly, education about the U.S., teaching English language, applying to U.S. universities, and establishing that relationship for people within Kosovo, emphasizing cultural programs, and then continued engagement with U.S. alumni. You can go ahead and go on to the next slide. So we kind of created this hypothesis to help us kind of figure out where we were going with this project. And so we decided and established that with increased internal collaboration and support from the United States Embassy and access to resources such as technology and transportation, the three American Corners will continue to advance the Department of State's strategic goals. And so through that, Kosovo will continue to educate its population, building its identity while also strengthening its economy and becoming a successful foreign partner in the United States. And so as our three case studies presenters go through, you will see kind of what each corner has to offer and the findings of each of those case studies. So for now, I will turn it over to Taylor to go over how we did that.
Thank you, Blair, and thank you, Dr. Foley. You can go to the next slide, please. So for the methodology for this research project, first, before we broke off into our groups, each individual in this class researched the history, culture, demography, and other pertinent factors relating to Kosovo, with particular emphasis on the three corners that they were studying. Next, after they had done the preliminary research and background to understand Kosovo and the corners itself, each research project met with the respective corner and the point of contact in the corner to ask critical questions related to each of the strategic goals that was outlined by the embassy, including goals, staffing, limitations, and barriers to education. During this, afterwards of these interviews with each corner's point of contact, then the entire group met with the embassy itself to develop a more detailed and comprehensive understanding of the entire American Corners program within Kosovo. Once this was completed, we had met with the point of contact in each of the three corners and the embassy itself. Each group compared responses to the overall strategic goal of the U.S. Embassy in Kosovo and gathered material findings as a result of this analysis. Next slide, please. As a result of these material findings that we found through our interviews and extensive research into Kosovo and the state of affairs in each city where the three corners were held, these are the three recommendations for the overarching American Corners project in Kosovo overall. Later on in the presentation, we will go over recommendations for each of the particular corners. However, these recommendations relate to the program overall. So the first that we recommend is an implementation of effective cooperation among the three American Corners. So this means more communication between the three, cooperation and sharing information, technology, best practices, these sort of ideas. The second would be for the American Corners staff to participate in the embassy's public affairs and strategic planning process that takes place annually. Just another way for these three corners to communicate share best practices, ideas, lessons learned, and to communicate any of their findings, issues, limitations that they're experiencing in a more broader sense with the program. And finally, the implementation of joint training throughout the year among staff and across all 3 corners. So the more training that the staffers have, the better program education and quality of the American Corner that they can provide for the students that participate in the American Corners in all 3 corners of the Kosovo program. And that's it for me. I will be handing it off to the next presenter. Thank you so much.
Hey everyone, thanks Taylor and Dr. Foley. My name is Kevin Dobbin and I'll be providing our first case study. Next slide, please. So my team was, we were in charge of Prizen, and essentially as Taylor discussed, our main focus at first was to get to know, one, the city, the culture, and everything that has to go around it, its relation with Kosovo itself as a country, and then kind of understand the program itself. We had the opportunity to talk to Mr. Osmani, who his team, he has 2 full-time employees and about 25 volunteers at the program, and got an opportunity just to understand his practices, how he runs his program, and what opportunities and interactions that he has with the U.S. Embassy. So Prizen is located in the southern part of Kosovo. It's located within the corner itself is located within the intermunicipal library. Unique to this, though, is that the library is actually one building, which is shared with 2 other businesses. So the space allocation for Mr. Osmani is his team is currently just 2 classrooms, essentially 1 conference room, 1 small office that seats about a table for 20 chairs. In 2018, he reported actually over 28,000 visitors, 314 programs and curriculum, and over 4,800 materials. And in 2019, he said his visitors continue to increase to about 30,000. Obviously now with COVID, in 2020, we'll see as those numbers develop, but obviously more virtual in that. In understanding his program and what he does, really the onset is he targets specifically primary and secondary schools, with the main attraction being elementary schools and wanting to learn English language. From there is where that relationship really gets developed, and from wanting to learn English, he was able to recruit kind of alumni of the corners that continue on to participate in different programs. Next slide, please. So really with the recommendations and understanding the program itself, we really saw that his team was running a great program. We believe that they were achieving the goals that the embassy had set forward, and was doing as much as he can. Obviously, one of the main limitations that he had was the space that was available. That is currently in works with the city of Prizen and possibly a new library. But obviously something to that, and some of the recommendations that we made was maybe, for specific programs to look at contracting out space, working with the university for specific events. Obviously the number of programs compared to the population size of that city, they're doing an excellent job. But I believe the more space will be able to afford them the opportunity to run concurrent programs. As Taylor said as well, is the main thing we looked at then was then the network itself, and really the joint planning and collaboration with the others. They had, at the time, he said about 1 to 2 times a year is when they'll actually sit down and do collaboration workshops with the other corners. And this was one of the big things that we saw as a group of that needed more interaction to really further the integrated strategic goals that the embassy had established for the American Corner itself. Specifically onto that was my next point 3 that you'll see there is the regional public engagement specialist in Belgrade involvement. And we believe further involvement with Belgrade and the regional public engagement specialist, and just for the group that may not understand, each American Corner, so there's 3 located within Kosovo. So you have Pristina, the capital, Mitrovica, and to the north in Prizen. Those 3 are then a part of an umbrella network that involve other countries. Serbia being one of the other countries, and Belgrade actually holding the regional post of the network itself. In talking with Mr. Osmani and his team, we saw that there wasn't really an interaction between those and the other countries, and especially in that area, in that region, and working with the embassy, a main focus that would help further the integrated strategic goals of the embassy. So we thought, and one of this is there's actually been examples of in India and Pakistan participating in virtual writing workshops where students connected, worked virtually, and then even further beyond this, they had continued to work and develop a relationship on social media. And that really gets after the mission goal 3, of really further and promoting regional stability in the area. And then finally there you'll see is the full-time position for an English teaching assistant provided by the embassy. Obviously, one of the main attractions to the American Corner programs is the ability for students to learn English and understand, our culture and what that has to bring. So I believe, if we could get that set into a full-time position, that would obviously increase. Appreciate it, everyone, and I'll be turning it over next to our next case study.
Thank you, Kevin. So my group and I focused on the American Corner Pristina, which is located in a college campus within the National Library of Kosovo. And then just in general, they have 3 staff members. They host over 300 activities per year and have up to 500 visitors per day. In relation to their programming, they focus primarily on the U.S. Embassy's strategic goal of economic development and growth due to the fact that Kosovo suffers from economic instability. And then just recently, they have renovated and expanded their space to include a maker space, which allows them to expand on their STEM classes, allows them to move towards a more hands-on approach versus a theory-based approach, and then allows the participants to use limited resources like 3D printers and laser printers. And we're going to move to the next slide, please. So I just came up with this pie chart just to demonstrate to everyone that in any given day, each staff member can be responsible for up to about 167 visitors. And next slide, please. And then finally, for the recommendations, the first one is to employ 1 or 2 more staff members, volunteers, and or interns, depending on the budget, as well as the pie chart that I just showed. The second one is to adopt a wider range of studies for the needs of the new generation. So as an example, the United States and other countries suffers from media literacy in determining what's fact versus fiction, finding the sources of media, and such things like that. The third one is to adopt a more comprehensive transportation assistance program. So just in general, the Kosovo public transportation ends at 6 o'clock at night. So if there are any classes or events that are past that, you're already excluding individuals from being able to join and take part of this program. And then the last one is to adopt classes to teach other students Serbian and Albanian. So according to my contact at the corner itself, over 90% of the people in Kosovo and about 99% of people who visit the corner actually speak Albanian. But for them to teach Albanian, they must also teach Serbian, which none of the staff members know, which makes them teach exclusively in English, which goes back to the first recommendation where the new members would either need to learn or already know how to speak Serbian. I'm going to pass it on to my next speaker.
Thank you. As my colleagues previously stated, there's so many different factors that contribute to why the American Corners are so important. And to begin, Mitrovica American Corner is located in Vuk Karadžić in the library, and it was opened on September 26 in 2005, and membership is free for all citizens. There are over 79 programs that include economic stability, programming for children, programming centered around human rights, programming for conversational English, programming for basic business and finance literacy. And so programming is so diverse and so essential for the people to have this opportunity. And they also are able to practice their English and learn more about the American culture and the American way. For us, if we found that the programming is essential in also creating a sense of unity among the people, and there's over 4,000 visitors that do attend with over 200 different materials that are circulated, and that includes magazines, videos, books, and also some technology items such as iPads for the children to use. Slide. So we found that through conversations with the actual staff there were several different recommendations. And one that really weighs heavily is that collaborated approach between all of the American corners. They're really wanting to utilize the human capital that can be found in all of the corners, joining together on their joint programming opportunities, as well as being able to be on one accord with training their staff and having a very coherent programming across all three. Their plan also is to implement a very strategic guideline so that they can say, okay, this is the American Corner and this is who we represent. This is what we do across the board, whether it's in our other cities, we all do the same thing, and that's offer an opportunity for the people to share in the American experience while also promoting the democratic values and citizen rights for all. Something that is very unique, though, to the American Corner Mitrovica is that there's a lot of tension between the Albanians and the Serbians. And so it requires a more detailed process and a heavier security to get into North Mitrovica than for the other corners. And so a recommendation is that the economic agreement between Kosovo and Serbia, brokered by the United States in October 2020, it needs to be publicized more widely to reduce some of that tension and encourage mutual understanding. So that is a very important recommendation that we found by speaking directly to the staff. Finally, the next slide, please. Finally, the programs need to also be centered around business and job creation and employment opportunities for the youth, which are so few. And also a new economic agreement needs to emerge for all of the citizens of Mitrovica. One of the programs that they are very interested is in the Dream Builder program, which is an international program that gives and empowers women through education. It gives them an opportunity to start their own business, and it gives a very detailed plan where people go through the courses and they walk away with an actual business plan. And it's been successfully implemented at other corners. And so this corner wants to implement that program there, but through that partnership of all the corners, they want to promote this economic stance amongst all of them. And so in short, Mitrovica American Corner is an excellent place where the citizens can be empowered to take a more active approach in their government, in their lives, in their economics, in their education, and in their ability to socialize. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much to the IUPUI team for that presentation. We're a little short on time, but I did notice that there was a question from Nina Murray in the chat that I think it would be fantastic if one of our student presenters or Professor Foley could address. But real quick, I'm going to pass the mic now and reintroduce Professor Foley, who was the faculty lead for this project, as well as the State Department officers who oversaw it, Basim Kokolari and Ray Naylor. If you guys, hi Basim. I don't know if I see Ray, but I see you, so we're just going to go ahead and get started. Basim, why was this something that you thought like, hey, this is some research we could use, and maybe Diplomacy Lab is the way to get the research we're looking for?
Thank you, Brian, very much. And I want to thank upfront Professor Foley and his students for this wonderful work they did for us. So our American Corners, as students mentioned, have grown steadily over the years in terms of the complexity and quantity of their program staffing, resources, and public outreach capacities. So we wanted to make sure that we keep our American Corners focused and relevant both for the embassy and to the local communities they serve. So the best way probably to find out if things are working, if a program is working, is to conduct some sort of research. And we were very excited to submit this proposal on Diplomacy Lab platform and got Professor Foley and his students interested in it.
Basim, thank you so much. Professor Foley, as I mentioned earlier, you've taken on a whole range of Diplomacy Lab projects over the years. What was it about this topic that caught your attention?
I think the amount, Brian, and also Besim, good to see you again. It's the amount of good that this program does. In looking at the different bids, this program basically enacts the U.S. is a global force for doing some good things and creating government value and government trust. And this program does that. And in a region that needs stability, you go back, my PhD's in history, to Mark Bloch, who wrote a little book called The Road to Sarajevo. It's been a long and difficult time in that region. And we as the United States and this class and your program has a chance to deliver some regional stability. And that, we applaud what they're doing there in the network.
That's great, Professor. I don't want to rush anybody off, but I do want to make sure that we can get our final presentation before the end of this. So I'm going to leave it at that. Professor Foley and Besim, thank you so much for joining us. To all of the students at IUPUI who presented, fantastic work. We really appreciate your contribution to the Department of State, and hope to see you back in the halls of the Harry S. Truman Building someday in the future. I also want to give a special shout out to Leslie Bozeman, who oversees the Diplomacy Lab program at IUPUI. Leslie, you're a fantastic partner in continuing to recruit really great student teams for this program. So thank you so much for everything you've done for this partnership. Finally, last but not least, we're going to get onto our closing presentation today. This is one that I'm sure is relevant to everyone who's on the call. It's called Analyzing Risk Communication and Behavioral Change During the COVID-19 Pandemic. So just about as topical as you can get. This was conducted actually by a few different university teams, but the presentation we're going to hear from today is from a student team at Kennesaw State University in Georgia. So I am going to introduce Elaine Harris. Elaine, thank you so much for joining us today. Elaine has already graduated and has come back to present their findings today with us. So Elaine, I'm going to turn the mic over to you. Elaine, do we have you on the line? Oh, yep, I see Elaine. I'm going to try to, I can't unmute you, Elaine, so we'll just need you to unmute yourself so that you can start this presentation.
Hello, anybody? Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now, Elaine. Hi, welcome.
Oh, now it works. Great.
Now it works.
Glad to be here. Can you guys see me as well?
We can see you as well. Thanks, Elaine.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize. I'm in my daughter's room. I had to come hiding here. So glad to be here with you guys. This project was conducted as part of a MSIT, which is a Master's in Technology. So we took an approach of using technology to analyze a real life situation. Our topic was, let's take a look at the Singapore Health Ministry official presence in the social media and see if the messaging that they are giving the public about risk management for COVID-19 actually has any sort of impact in the cases that are being reported on a weekly basis. So what we did was basically look for our information in the web. It's all public information. It's on their social media, Twitter and Facebook to be more exact. And we used some technology to collect information and comb through it and apply some statistical analysis to it. We framed the project with 3 questions. First one is social media an effective way to communicate mitigation strategies? The second question is there even a correlation between the messaging coming from the government officials and confirmed cases? And the third one is, are there any downward trends in positivity rates when mitigation mandates are issued? And mitigations, I mean anything from complete lockdowns to simply recommending better hygiene and wearing masks, etc. Next slide, please. So just a very quick profile of Singapore. Singapore is a very small country, and they are very active on social media. So from official numbers, population is 5.7 million, and about 4.3 million people are active Facebook users. So it's a very strong presence of social media in the country. But one interesting thing is that the engagement level in Facebook is measured at 4.03%. This means that for each post that actually shows up on a social media website, 4.3% of the people who saw it actually clicked on it, did something with it, paid attention to it. Next slide, please. So as I said, our methodology was simply to use public sources on the internet. We have used some techniques that are becoming common for artificial intelligence and for data science. We basically combed their Facebook site and we got all the messages posted between February and end of July, all related to COVID-19, which were pretty much almost every message there. And we also extracted Twitter. Twitter and Facebook, the contents were kind of similar, only that Facebook is more detailed and Twitter is really very simple and straight to the point. We collected all this data then because we are a technology class. We used some technology to help us figure out what the government was saying and what message they were trying to convey. We used some text analytics and we sorted out all the messages we found into topics, each topic being related to behaviors or to regulations that were being enforced. We added to that the official numbers from the World Health Organization on new confirmed cases and deaths, combined everything and applied some statistical modeling to find significant information. Next slide, please. After we analyzed all the texts, we landed on a list of categories of topics that the government was talking about. So number one was enforcing just the precautionary measures, which is wear masks, wash your hands, that sort of stuff. And also, most importantly, telecommute as much as you can and avoid going out to crowded spaces. That was very important in their messages. Stay home as much as possible, and if you must go out, be cautious, wear your mask, and etc. Another big category was messages relating to border controls. Singapore is a very small place, and lots of international travelers arrive every day. Lots of the messaging that you see in the month of March were related to all the restrictions that were being put in place at the time to prevent more sick people coming into the country. And I'll just cover the next big one, which is communication of outbreaks in the dormitories in the city. The dormitories in Singapore are dense housing buildings where most of the migrant population that works in the country on temporary visas, work visas, that's where they live. That's where most of the outbreaks were detected and needed to be contained. Next slide, please. Next slide. So we applied some standard statistical analysis looking for two things. What is the government talking about and how frequently they do it? So to do that, we aggregated the number of messages on a specific topic each month. And we then also analyzed how popular those messages were. And the way that we did that was by seeing how many likes and how many shares that a specific topic would get in social media. So the most frequent topic the government chose to talk about was the outbreaks in the dormitories. And that was the second most popular for people to reply to. Interestingly, on average, the most shared topic was anything related to tracing, contact tracing procedures, and trying to figure out where the new cases were coming from. People liked to share that a lot. As far as the absolute favorite by Facebook users, got to the most reactions was the announcement of changes to the circuit breaker restriction. Circuit breaker is what they called a series of measures put in place to try to contain infections. Once those measures were being lifted, that's the announcement that folks found the most interesting on Facebook. So really our conclusion is that people will follow up on the day-to-day messages the government sent, but what really piqued people's interest is when that one message that talks about changes to their daily lives comes in. That's what got people most excited to share with all their friends. Next slide, please. So the other thing that we wanted to find out is, with all this effort in communicating good behaviors, how does that change the number of cases? So we did a purely statistical mathematical analysis on this. We ran a Pearson correlation, and we know correlation is just a correlation. It's not a cause of anything, but it's a good place to start. We compared the frequency of a specific topic to the average cases 14 days after. So if I announce today that everybody should wear masks, what happens to the infection rates 2 weeks after that? We analyzed that. Mathematically wise, we didn't find any correlations between any of the topics chosen by the government and what happened to the infection rates 14 days later. It doesn't appear mathematically. The only correlation that we found that was a strong correlation was the average daily cases and the messages about precautions, wearing masks, hygiene, avoiding crowds, etc. We did find a correlation there, and it's a positive correlation, which to us indicates that the government officials simply increase the frequency of messages on precautions as the cases are going up, and they decrease the messaging frequency as the rates of infections are dropping. Next slide, please. We also focused on some very specific behaviors within precautions, and we found out that the emphasis on wearing masks, which here in America was something very big for everybody, the government there didn't talk much about it. 2.5% to 9.5% of the messages on a given month were on the topic of wearing masks and hygiene. But on the other hand, the most emphasis was on telecommuting as much as possible and avoiding going to crowded places. That's really where most of the effort was. And the other important month was the month of March, when all the travel restrictions went in place, and that's the month that you're going to see communications about stay-home notices and what nationals would be allowed to visit Singapore, and all the restrictions that were going into place. Next slide, please. And finally, that's our timeline analysis. So we wanted to find out, okay, let's go look at the case trends, and let's see at which points in time the government made announcements of some mandates, like border restrictions or wearing masks or working from home, etc. And what happens to the cases as time goes by. So what we noticed was two very important things. Thing number one is the restrictions on travel were extremely effective in really locking down the country. Singapore is a very busy airport. They have 2.5 million passengers arriving monthly on average, and that dropped to almost nothing. that dropped to 3,000 passengers. So it's less than 1% of the regular traffic through the airport. So it was very effective. At the same time that this was all going on, the cases were spiking. They were spiking in April. So it took a while to get momentum on those restrictions. We noticed that apparently the circuit breaker restrictions on people being home and wearing masks, etc., they went into effect in like early April, and we do notice that the cases really started dropping 14 days later. And they continued kind of going up and down some, but the trend in general is downward. So we can't really assess mathematically. We couldn't measure any correlations between the frequency of messages in social media and the consequences. But we do notice that the case trends, they really respond to some of those mandates that were put in place, and in a positive way, which is by reducing the number of new infections. Next slide, please. And thank you guys for the opportunity. This was a very interesting project, way more interesting than anything else that I have seen for the program, and I thank Dr. Tian and Dr. Han for this opportunity, and Dr. Lee as well, who is here with us. Thank you very much, guys.
Elaine, thank you so much for that presentation. Really appreciate it. If anyone has questions for Elaine, go ahead and drop them in the chat. And Elaine, if you want to follow up or provide your email address, we can let folks connect with you there. So we're going to close out today's event with one final conversation. It's my pleasure to introduce two of my colleagues, Joshua Glasser and Jason Frohnmeyer from the Office of International Health and Biodefense in the Bureau of Oceans and Environmental Science. Josh and Jason will be joined by the professors Shirley Chen and Jigong Li from Kennesaw State University. So I first want to bring Jason and Josh on the line. You know, this topic is what I remember you submitted the proposal for this project, you know, within days of the State Department announcing that we were going to start staying home and working from home. You were on it like that. You know, obviously this is an important topic, but what made you think to approach trying to get research about this in this way? What made this specific proposal something that you thought would be of value to your office and to the department at large?
So I'll start. Global health and global health security are essential to economic and national security. However, in the pre-COVID days, it's been hard to make that conversation part of the broader discussion if you're not talking with representatives from the ministries of health. So we wanted to understand what approaches for public engagement were working and why, especially in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, when we were still struggling with trying to understand both the architecture of the virus and the transmission rates, as well as ring the bell to try and encourage people to take safety precautions as much as possible.
Thanks, Jason. Josh, do you have anything to add to that?
I think Jason captured it quite well. I did want to give a shout out. There was a second class at Kennesaw State that also participated in this project and did a study of similar issues in the UK. And so it was very interesting. Of course, we're a foreign affairs agency. We don't look domestically at issues, but to see comparisons of how different societies and countries went about tackling this issue and how it went was really quite fascinating. And so we really thank the team at Kennesaw State for applying some unique analytic techniques to get a handle on a very timely issue. Over.
Yeah, Josh, I feel like we could really set up an entire event around the topic that you proposed, given how much there is to compare between the different teams you worked with. So again, thank you to both you and Jason for proposing this topic that's so relevant and for working with all of these student teams. Doctors Chen and Jigong Li, I just want to ask you quickly, obviously COVID-19 was a topic that was on everyone's mind, but what made you approach the research in the way that you did? By focusing, on Singapore and by working with your students the way that you did.
Yes. First, I want to thank Jason and Joshua about this project, and we're really excited to present the research project today. And the reason we choose this project was first our research area or social media analytics. So I thought this topic maybe fit our project, our research goals, and also can benefit to our students in graduate and undergraduate students. So we choose two teams to focus on two different countries outside except US, okay? And one is in the Eastern and another one is in the Western country. So for the Western country, we choose one country that's similar to US. They may have a very similar culture. So we choose UK, and another one we choose an Eastern country. But and the way we choose the Singapore rather than other Asian countries, because Singapore they use English and Mandarin and other languages, so they have a very diverse diverse culture. So that's the reason we choose these two countries. And also, data analytics is one of the hot areas in IT for students' placement after their graduation. So the students can benefit from the research process, and most students they love this project, and they said they would like to pursue their career in government as this result of the project.
Thank you, Dr.
Dr. Lee, do you have any additions?
I think Dr. Tian summarized really well, and I just want to say thank you again to Jason and Josh for their sponsorship and for their support throughout the project. We've had a really wonderful time working with them, and obviously I also want to thank Elaine again for her wonderful job in this project. Thank you all.
Thank you all. I realize we're a few minutes over the 1:30 timeline, but Jason, Josh, Shirley, Jigong, thank you all so much for joining us today. But to everyone else who has participated in this event, I can't thank you enough. I think this was a really fantastic opportunity to showcase the incredible work that you've all done. Again, if you are on the State Department side and you have questions about how you might submit a project, how you might work with a university team, what kinds of projects that we're looking for as part of this program, by all means, reach out to me directly at gerhartbr@state.gov, or visit our external page is www.diplomacylab.org. Our internal page is state.gov/s/partnerships. Again, thank you so much to everyone who joined. This is a program we run every semester, so there's always an opportunity to get involved. Thank you again to all of the students who presented. You guys did fantastic work, and we can't thank you enough for being a part of this public-private partnership. I'm going to give the final word to Tomas de Bas to just say goodbye or see you later or whatever he wants.
No, thank you, Brian. This is beyond our expectations in terms of not just the turnout, but also the quality of the presentation and the work. So this is a testament to what we already discussed on the quality of the work that has begun, and also the chemistry between our state colleagues and the students and faculty. So thank you for making this first DipLab demo day a success. And also the platform worked. We were a bit concerned as we were trying to do this Zoom or Google Meet and all that. So I'm glad it worked out. And thank you for taking the time to chat with us. And thank you, my colleagues who are calling in from Beirut and other places. I know it's late night for them, but I know this is also a commitment on their part, a demonstration of how important Diplomacy Lab is for their work. So thank you again on behalf of the entire office, the entire department, for your active engagement on this. And we know this network is going to continue to grow. And please tell your friends and your colleagues in terms of how Diplomacy Lab has helped your career, your research agenda. And the same for my State Department colleagues. Tell your colleagues around the world so they can utilize this amazing. It's almost the best kept secret within the department. So please make it go viral, and we appreciate you. But I would be remiss not to acknowledge Brian Gerhardt, and the entire team who's made this possible, but for Brian G, for his passion and commitment on this portfolio. And this would not have come together if it wasn't for his leadership. So I know I'm speaking on behalf of all the students and the faculty and my state colleagues who've engaged directly with Brian G, and how you all know how he feels about this. It's in his face. You could tell from his passion. So and nothing works if you don't have passion. So in this case, that's the reason Diplomacy Lab works, because he puts his heart and soul into it. So thank you, Brian Gerhardt. I'm proud to call you a colleague. And everybody, CJ and Jack and Anna and everybody who's on behind the scenes making all this possible. So thank you all. Have an amazing long weekend. Stay safe, stay well, and we look forward to a continued engagement for the years and semesters to come. Thank you.